need for a WOMP switch here.
Welcome back to the Fellow factory. We left you on a bit of a cliffhanger last time. We were so close to getting this thing started, but we called it quits because we weren't quite ready there. The car is now pretty well complete. I got the front of the car back on, lights, bumpers, bumper, little chrome bumper. We haven't put the bonnet on because it makes it a pain to work on. Every accelerator cable, clutch cable, choke cable, everything is now connected, and we have started the car. It has got no exhaust on it, and it actually sounds gangster, but I cannot drive it like that on the street. I have had a delivery come from Bend Brothers, so I've got a bunch of 2-inch stainless pipe. It has got a 1.75 inch exhaust from standard. I could have replaced it with 1.75, but I wanted to step it up a little bit. The plan in the future is actually to potentially make up a couple of expansion chambers for this. It's a massive job, and there's a whole bunch of science in around it. If you've made one before and you know what you're doing, please reach out. I may just throw on a couple of 125cc expansion chambers just so it looks cool. There is a little bit of room in there, but it is actually quite crammed once you add everything on. So stepping up to the 2-inch just for me was just ease of material too. So I've actually got a couple of bends on the shelf still that I can reuse. And the muffler I've got is also 2-inch. So it's going to be basically stainless all the way through to the muffler. The rear diff, we've got some bushes for the rear end. They're a weird tapered bush, which you cannot find. The bushes I've ended up just jumped on the linisher with something that was of size, kind of shaped them to what I need them to be. Westy has saved the day again. He's actually made up some crush tubes and some bolts to work with those bushes. The standard bolts were all C's and they snapped when getting them out, and I had to cut a few of them out. So Westy's a legend. He saved the day. He machined up some bolts. They look factory. And now we are going to bolt the rear end in. I've made up some brake lines for the rear control arms. It all is pretty well factory. Once we get the rear end in, diff, control arms, we can bleed the brakes, and then we can go for a hot lap, which I'm hoping for is going to happen tonight. It's a Tuesday. We've got some crew around, so we're going to hook in, get it done, throw some lads in the car, and go for a drive. Fingers crossed. The wonderful world of YouTube makes this project seem like it was an absolute breeze, but truth be told, this resto has been very time consuming. We started working on the Daihatsu in November, and the footage you're seeing here was actually filmed in the middle of January, so that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of how time consuming this resto has been. Putting this diff in was actually a bit of a saga, to be honest. The custom bushes that I made ended up being too wide, so they didn't work. We had to remove everything, shave everything down, but we got there in the end. Whilst the tail shaft was out, I'm also giving it a bit of a service. The uni joints were quite notchy, so we disassembled the uni, cleaned all the roller bearings, repacked it with new grease, pressed everything back together, and now it should be good for another, I don't know, let's call it 20 years. I'm now working through the guibos, which you probably say is actually more of a CV joint. That's kind of how it works. It goes in between the diff and the axle, and basically still can transmit drive through an angle. This is a standard one. It's got a 92mm PCD. It still is okay. It does have a few cracks in there. The passenger side one originally was cooked, so my mate Sabo actually replaced it with this. This is from a, I think, E36 BMW, and he just basically hit it with a die grinder to match the PCD. But that one is not correct, so in the bin. I actually called a industrial place and got a quote for 2 of these, and he quoted me $4,500 for 2 of these rubber guibos, which was just ridiculous. Basically, the place I went through makes them for machinery and then like high RPM, high load rated. I definitely didn't need that for this car because it makes all of probably 20 horsepower. So I settled with a couple Ford Falcon tail shaft rubbers. This has a 96mm PCD. There is a few different ones for Falcons and Territories and everything. This is 92mm, and yes, it's not right, but the Falcon uses a larger bolt than the Daihatsu, so basically I'm just gonna give it a squeeze and make it all work. We've already got one on there, it fits fine. It's still transmitting the drive through an angle, which is all we want it to do. When it gets to ride height though too, these are actually level anyway. So that's when they're level, they're not binding them up or anything. So that's where we're up to. The tail shaft, we replaced the unis in, gave it a quick little touch up with paint, and it's fitted. So now we can put some oils in the gearbox and the diff, and then we'll sort out some brake stuff, handbrake cables, brake shoes, brake drums, and then the wheels can go on for good, and we can probably start this thing up and make sure everything works, like the clutch cable that wasn't adjusted correctly. The Fellow is back together for the most part. Everything pretty well is done, but the brakes, we were bleeding the brakes and someone snapped the bleeder nipple, so I've got to sort that out. But now I'm going to move on to the exhaust. At the start of the episode, I said I would love to make up some expansion chambers for this thing, but for now, I just want to get it on the road. This is the standard, I'm assuming, I'm going to call it an expansion chamber, even though it's muffler shaped. Basically, it's got a pipe that goes this way and a pipe that goes that way. There's no baffling inside that I can tell. I've had the camera in there, and it is kind of tapered. So assumption is it's an expansion chamber of sorts. We've had the car running and it definitely doesn't love it, and I'm assuming that it's going to need something like this. So we're going to run with this for now. I'll give it a coat of paint so it looks nice, and from here I'm going to step up to 2-inch and go all the way to the back of the car. I do have a 2-inch muffler also, which I may fit, but I also want it to be loud and obnoxious because two-strokes are cool. Material wise, I've got a bunch of bends from David at Bend Brothers. He supplied a bunch of stuff for Kevo, and now we're going to do the same thing for the Fellow. So 2-inch stainless, these are polished and cleaned, ready to weld. I've got 6 bends. I've got a couple of bends up there left over from Kevo from the wastegate, and I've got a whole bunch of straight. I don't want to get too complicated with it. I'm pretty well just going to have a straight pipe going to the back of the car. By the end of it, hoping it sounds good and that this doesn't disrupt this whole expansion chamber setup. In the future, I would love to do some wacky big expansion chamber or twin expansion chambers off the side, but there's a whole bunch of science in that. Were you waiting for that to fall off the bench? There's a whole bunch of science involved with port timing and everything. It's too much for me, so I think I said if you're a two-stroke guy and you want to make me an expansion chamber, be my guest. So we're going to fire the TIG up. I haven't fired it up for a while, so I might be a bit rusty, and get this thing with an exhaust and then go for a little hot lap, I think. Well, did I say TIG? Oh, I meant MIG. You know what MIG stands for? Metal in gaps, and that's exactly why I'm using it. This factory exhaust system is very thin and very corroded, and I didn't want to waste any time, so smash it with the MIG and away we go. All the stainless is then being TIG welded. As I said, this material has come from David at Bend Brothers. He's a top bloke, and all of these bends are supplied ready to weld. No cleaning necessary, smash it on, away you go. Yes, I did give it a quick wipe down with some acetone, but it does make the process a lot quicker rather than getting some raw stainless, which you need to clean thoroughly before using it.
It's even got Skid Factory on it. What do you reckon, like that?
That's sitting there now, yeah, flush.
That's like poking out the side of the car.
It's going to act as a venturi
So it gets
and
fresh
help with
air.
scavenging.
You reckon that's good, Miller?
Fresh air comes down here and then draws out
Pulls
the
it
exhaust
out.
gases.
No more safety straps.
She's a long boy.
It's a long boy.
No flanges, no worries.
No flange, no worries. Oh, that's what the safety straps are for.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much like that, and then slid up and in.
I'm by far a professional fabricator and I have been teased about my welds in the past, but guess what? I really don't care, and I'm here to tell you, if you're keen to give welding a crack, then go on, treat yourself to a machine. It's a really great skill that you'll have for life, and truth be told, it's really not that hard. I was given a crash course from Al, but since then I'm pretty well self-taught and I've picked up a few skills along the way. The TIG welder I'm using is a Unimig Viper 180. It uses a 10 amp plug, so it can be used at home. It was supplied by Supercheap Auto, who also stock a range of Unimig consumables. You will, however, need to source your own bottle of argon gas, which can be found through any gas supplier. You'd normally call this the moment of truth, but we already know the car runs, so this is probably more a moment of achievement. Just a few things we tidied up then. The brake bleeder I actually sorted with which got a 16th NPT to -4 Raceworks fitting, and then we put a -4 plug over the top of that. That is now our bleeder for that back left-hand wheel cylinder. We also had some stainless strap from Bend Brothers, which we then secured to the back of the gearbox to kind of support that muffler. So the whole exhaust system kind of is one with the engine gearbox, and then there's those two mounts at the back. We just started it up before and it's very loud and raspy. Probably going to put a muffler in there, but at the same time, I like that it's loud and obnoxious. So I think we might put the bonnet on and maybe go for a hot lap. I don't know, we'll see how we go. The car still is unregistered, so I've got to borrow a trade plate, and that hasn't arrived yet. So we'll see how we go. That charger light's still on the dash, so that could be maybe whoever took the alternator generator apart cooked it.
Is it just a little bulb we can pull out?
All right, here we go.
Go for it.
More choke. There he is. Hey! Raspy, eh?
That sounds so good back here, eh?
You like it?
Yeah, it's
Do
got
ya?
a deep tone to it.
I don't know if I love it. It's a bit. I do like how it looks now. It looks better, being that you're looking at it from this angle.
Yeah, from this angle it's not too obnoxious, but
Yeah.
The purists might not like it.
So the first test drive of the Daihatsu went pretty good. We made it halfway around the block.
First starts are always nerve-wracking, and first drives are even scarier. And everything was going well. We actually had a fuel filter failure, the little Ryko Z4, the little mower filter. I was a bit rough putting it on. I actually snapped the plastic, so it was actually sucking air. Put a new, just a metal Ryko on there. That got it sorted. The timing we had set, I didn't actually tighten the dizzy, just purely thinking it's not going to move, but a little two-stroke vibrated it loose and it actually advanced the timing so much it didn't want to run. We changed the spark plugs also. The spark plugs that were supplied, they were needed to protrude another at least 10 mil in so it could actually into the cylinder head. And then we went for a drive and actually it was all going good. It's very slow, but it put a massive smile on my face. I was loving it. I had probably 3 or 4 laps around the block. Geordie went for a drive. Geordie had a massive smile on his face. He loved it. And then we pulled back up into the driveway and it just shut off and this happened. And it's not a flat battery. Unfortunately, the engine is seized. So the service life per rebuild is like 1 kilometre. I was pretty butthurt the other day. I actually kind of packed up shop, just left it, put it in the corner, and I'm back here today. I assume what's happened is the oil pump, although I did bleed it, it's somehow got an airlock in there somehow, and it's not supplying oil to the main bearing, the roller bearings in the centre of the crank. That's what I think it is anyway, and you know, spinning the engine at, don't know what RPM, but a high RPM and buzzing around the road. The last time I went for it, I was changing from 3rd to 4th. I kind of heard like like when you spin a bearing up when it's dry, like that kind of rattly noise, and it kind of felt like it lost a bit of power. And when it pulled back to idle, it was idling for 20 seconds and then it shut off. So I'm assuming that's what's happened. It's a bit of a bummer. It's all a learning curve, as they say, and I wasn't wearing my lucky hat at the time too. So I've thrown it on today, and we're going to actually pull this engine back out and suss out what's going on. Let's get the Yamaha engine and swap it into this. Done. That was originally the idea, but it's not going to work.
God damn it. You always catch like 5%.
Getting the engine back out of the car was actually a good little test to kind of see how easy it was to work on this thing. Previously, we bolted everything on the engine and then slotted the engine in, but now it's cool to see, okay, hey, can I get to those inlet manifold bolts? Can I get the exhaust manifold off? And although it's quite a small engine bay, you still have a fair bit of room to work on the engine. I'm also lucky and very grateful to have an awesome group of friends who have come around to give me a hand on this. So with 4 of us hooking in, it didn't take very long.
That ain't going nowhere, cuz.
Hey! You ready to tear this thing apart?
Let's do it.
Come forward off the gearbox.
Got the gearbox
Muscles
on.
has got it.
Oh yeah, I've got a feel.
All we have to do is take off the front cover. Why don't we do that in the first place?
We have identified a problem, the bearing that's in the front case here, which actually isn't fed any oil. This is the oil feed for the 2 main bearings in the crank here. This bearing at the front, I assume, just runs off intake oil or crankcase oil, which we were pre-mixed. So maybe I've overspun it. Maybe it was...
Maybe you were wrong.
Maybe it's meant to be packed with grease, but I doubt that.
Yeah.
I mean, the wheel bearings last... You pull it off every 40,000 Ks.
Yeah.
So it's a bit tight on there, so we're just going to give this a little go first with a puller. And we're either going to break the housing.
Something's going tink.
Maybe we should get some heat onto that,
It'll make it expand though. Yeah.
on the bearing. Let's just hang on, 2-stroke fumes. We've played this game before. Oh, the bearing, the outer's coming off with it, the inner's staying where it is. Yes.
What's your problem?
Yes. All right. Lucky merch draw. Sending these in the post around the world.
Some fellow debris.
Whistle and diesel spec.
Oh. There's heaps there, there's another one.
Damn. Well, at least it's kind of an easy fix. Quick, do these bolts back up so we don't have to crack that sealant.
Keep it sealed. Do you have another bearing?
Nah, I'm gonna have to order a different one.
That's gold. That's a good outcome though.
I was pretty butthurt that I had to pull this engine back apart. Everything was fresh, painted. I'd spent so much time and money on this Resto. For it to fail on the first test drive, it really did bring my spirits down, but we've come up with a solution. Westy is saving the day once again. This is his container workshop, and we're down here to use the mill to modify this distributor housing. The conclusion with the bearing was basically that it was not getting enough lubrication. So what we're actually going to do is machine a port into the front distributor housing so that it can feed oil down into that bearing. You can see here the groove we've machined into this bearing retainer, I suppose you'd call it. This now will feed oil down into the roller bearing, and the port injection for the inlet manifold has now been deleted. So I will always run this engine on a premix fuel, and the oil injection is just to supply oil to the roller bearings in the bottom end. I did split the case to inspect the other roller bearings and also to make sure there was no extra bearing material hiding anywhere, and once I was happy everything could be cleaned up, sealed up and bolted back together. The ZM360 is a very basic engine. There's not many fasteners that hold this thing together, and now that we're familiar with the engine, piecing it back together was a very speedy process. Once I had the engine bolted back in, I wanted to make a change to the exhaust. It was a bit loud and I didn't quite like the sound it produced. It sounded pretty barky at idle, but the higher you got into the RPM, the sound just got worse. So I'm adding a muffler to quieten it down a little bit. I've never modified a muffler like this before. All I've done is basically lop about 60mm off both ends and then re-welded the caps back on. I then fitted up snug next to the fuel tank, welded on some mounts and then modified the existing exhaust to meet up with the muffler. Everything's back together and we're ready to go for another run. We have primed the oil system and I've also topped up this tank with a lot more oil. So basically last time I just primed it down to the pump and waited for it to come through the lines. Now we've actually primed it right through to those ports on the crankcase. So now I've got a oil injection port on the front distributor housing where it feeds into the front crank bearing, and there's one that feeds into the center crank bearings. Those lines are now full of oil. Now we've just got a little bit of fuel in the carby and we can hit the choke, start it up. You're good? Yep. And see what it sounds like with this muffler. Before it was a little bit too loud. I didn't really love it, so now with the muffler hopefully it's quietened down a little bit. And here we go, you're good? Wow, that's way quieter. You can't even hear that. I can hear an exhaust leak. It's
still got a little bit of a note to it, but it's quiet as. Well, I'll put a filter on, yeah. Real smoky, probably a bit too much oil in the crankcase.
We're pretty well starting from scratch here. The engine just didn't love running or coming back down to idle, so we had to check and set the timing once again. We also had the carburetor off, and I must have bumped the idle air adjustment screw, so we've had to reset that. So after a bit of finesse, we got the car running beautifully. What you don't see here is I'm actually on a deadline. I had a roadworthy certificate booked for the afternoon, and then I wanted to make it to Queensland Transport to get this thing registered. So we were rushing a little bit, but after a while we got it running beautifully, so I could take it for a drive and make our appointment for the roadworthy.
Loves it!
Yeah. What a weapon. It's the moment of truth. A maiden voyage to Queensland Transport. I got a roadworthy sorted last week. I actually went in to see the guys and the ladies, sorry. And this has got an import mod plate. LO1 code, I believe it is. And unfortunately I didn't have the paperwork to suit to say the green sheet that was my copy. I don't know where it is. The only paperwork I've got is some Japanese writing to say that this car's been imported. So now they want to see the vehicle, they want to sight the mod plate on the car. So on the way to transport and very slowly. And this is a bit of a maiden voyage for the car. So I've got a Tool Pro toolkit in the back, and hoping that everything goes well, but obviously you can't drive the car without rego, so once I get it rego then we can free roam, drive on the streets. I do have third-party CTP on this vehicle already, which allows me to drive the vehicle to Queensland Transport, so that's how I'm driving right now. That was a great success at the transport department, and I now have my plates sorted. I've got 24 hours to put them on the car. This vehicle just puts the biggest smile on my face. People are looking at you, giving you thumbs up. It's extremely slow, and I've got to kind of plan my route home because there's a few big hills I have to get around, but all in all, the driving experience and the sound this thing makes is awesome. I'm absolutely loving it. Going up a hill doing 40 k's an hour. Oh, it's kind of making it.
I've had the Daihatsu on the road for a couple of weeks now, and I've been enjoying it ever since. I've been to a couple of Cars and Coffee events, and this thing always puts a smile on my face. It's really, really slow. The slowest car I've ever driven, but it honestly is one of the most funnest cars I've ever driven. It just puts a smile on your face, the sound, you got to drive it with like aggression, but also a bit of finesse. It's a really cool car to drive. It's very filthy. It's covered in stains. It's covered in overspray, and it definitely needs some love. So I've got Mitchy booked in from Sunny Coast Auto Detailing. I'm going to get this thing freshened up and presentable for some events, which I'm going to be at Growl Racing Pulse Performance Expo on the 9th of March, which is next weekend coming. So if you want to come down and see the Daihatsu in person, I'm also going to have the Crown Wagon there. It's going to be an awesome event, and you'll see this thing. If I'm allowed to fire it up, if it's outside, we'll give it a little rev. But I'm really stoked with the progress on this car, and I've said that I'll sell it, but at the same time, I don't know, it's not a forever car, but I really want to hang on to this thing because it's so good. Just running down to the shops to get some lunch or to want a quick parts run or something. As you can see in the shed, we've got some projects going, and if you follow us on social media, I've kind of given away the next project, which is my MA70 Supra, so stay tuned for that. I've also got another mate's VN in at the moment, so there's no shortage of work going on in the shed. Some of these jobs are love jobs, and some of them are jobs I'll film, so if you're subscribed, you get to see what content's going on, and follow us on social media to keep up to date with kind of the day-to-day stuff. Thank you for watching another episode of The Fellow Factory. If you want to grab a shirt and support the show, we've got some shirts done and some stickers. It's a weird beard car. I'm a weird beard kind of bloke, even though I don't have a beard. But you can also get yourself a weird beard shirt if you would like to support the Skid Factory. Thanks for watching, drive safe, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy the moment. Cheers.
You know who I've got a shout out for this week? That's you. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks to everyone leaving a positive comment on the video. I've had a great response about the Daihatsu Resto, and I'm stoked to be at the final finishing stages of the project. This car is so much fun to drive, and I'm really keen to put some Ks on the clock. Well, what's for dinner? Let's have a nasi goreng.
Ah, my hair! Oh! And it just blew straight through that. Yeah, g'day mate, just checking what day we're riding. Loud noises, riding this weekend. See you soon, bye. Bang bang. 17 minutes of recording, and this was 4K too. Whoops.
Keep going. Can you circularly breathe?
I can, but not on this. It's too big. Can't get the reverberation. Nah, sorry.
Whoopsie.
There goes all the wheel nuts. Damn it. And the 50 million washers.
Oh, it's so dirty.
We're rip tear bust. Like that's.
I wanted to just inspect you, that's what my logic was.
Yeah.
You know. And once that compressor turns off.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Oh, that's hot. That's a hot angle.
Feeding my meat to a friend. We'll wait till the compressor finishes and then we'll talk some shit.
Where's the gasket?
My pocket.
Oh.
On the ground.
They look like they fit me.
Old jocks are the perfect rag. What are you talking about?
Look like they came from pumpkin patch or
Nah,
something.
they're Gary's, those ones.
Are they?
Yeah.
Good things come in small packages.
Yeah, what do you learn?
What does that make you
What do
then?
you learn?